All right. Hello again, everybody. Okay, so earlier today I was able to spend some time testing the new beta for X-Plane 11 in VR, and I'll put that online here in a bit when I have a chance to get to it, edit it a little bit. Hello from Russia. Igor, good to see you. Now we're testing Vulkan in the home cockpit. So far, everything is working. The Logitech FIPs are working. So far, it looks like the real sim gear is working. We're going to find that out here in a second. The radio stack seems to be working. One problem that people have had is that if you're running more than 3 screens, it will take one of the screens and make the image basically about a third of the size, not fill the whole screen. Seems to me that that has to do with having the 3 screens all have the same native resolution. So I run all 3 of these in 1080p. That's their native resolution. And as soon as I disabled this screen for the real sim gear, which is not 1080p native, it fixed it. I then went back and plugged this one in to, which runs off the onboard video card for the CPU, not off my 1080 Ti. And it seems to be working fine without messing these resolutions up. So it seems to me that at least in the beta, if you have multiple screens that are plugged into the same card with different resolutions, it messes it up. Because this is not running at 1080p. So we'll see that that works here in a second. Hello from Ireland, or to Ireland. We're on the ramp at Van Nuys. This is about as taxing as a place as I can think of. We have ortho scenery. I'll show you the settings I have here in a second. And we have real world weather. Active Sky XP seems to be working fine. It updated the plugin and seems to be working fine with Vulkan. So let me show you the settings that we've got. And right now here I'm getting about 20 frames a second. And the big hog for me is clouds. Clouds really kills the frame rates. So let me show you what we've got here. I'll toggle over the view. So I'm running medium visual effects. The card actually runs pretty well at HDR, but I get some frames back at medium. I'm running anti-aliasing 4x. My experience with HDR was when I'd fly into the clouds, it would really start to hit the frames, and if I drop the anti-aliasing, it would help with that. Texture is maxed, world objects are maxed. Reflection detail, I'd been running with it maxed, but I noticed in VR, upping the reflection detail had no effect on the performance. But in non-VR, it seems to. And maybe it's because I've got 3 screens going. But I'm keeping reflection detail at 1, because I've noticed I lose 5 to 10 frames when I bump it up. Parked aircraft are on. We're using Vulkan, obviously. Shadows are on. So this is quite a bit more, quite a bit higher than what I was running with before. I would have been running with visual effects medium, texture quality maximum because the card has a lot of VRAM. Anti-aliasing would have been at 2x. Number of rolled objects would have been medium or 1 notch down, and reflections would have been off. Parked aircraft would have been off. Shadows would have been off. And I would have been sitting here at about 20 frames a second. Now, the other thing I've noticed is that when I am on the ramp, that's when the system seems to be taxed the most. That once you get up and you're flying, it seems to deal with things a little bit better. I'm also, and sometimes the frames will go up quite a bit, which means it seems to me that it's managing the scenery better than it was when it was running off OpenGL. I'm running VMI Twick, which I use in VR to kind of keep settings as a frame limiter. If I were to just go into the mode that the sim would be using right now, you can see that my frame rates go down to 16. Auto mode, which is handy, will basically, you pick a frame rate that you want. I could say 20, and it will adjust cloud and level of detail of the scenery, as you can see it's doing there automatically, to bring you that frame rate. But I find that it's a bit over conservative. So if I were to put it to 20, we'll see where it takes the LOD up to here. It'll probably take it up to maybe, Well, it's still climbing, so that's pretty good. 60%. Maybe a little higher. Yeah, it's working its way up. What I'll notice, though, is it can be a bit conservative. So what I'll often do is I'll go to user mode and adjust this until I see if the frames get better or worse. I mean, it's 20 frames right now, whether I have it down here, or it's 20 frames if I have it up at about 80. So sometimes I'll just leave it at 80, but it looked like the auto mode was working pretty well, so you know, we can go ahead and leave it there and see how it works. Obviously, I'd want a frame rate higher than 20 frames per second, but that's about the best I'm going to get maxed out with clouds overcast here at Van Nuys. TJ, good to see you. So we're going to go ahead and, I'm not on Pilot Edge or anything, but we'll go ahead and make a flight here. Change our view to the front view and play with some settings and see how things look and how things go. And see if everything continues to work, which is part of what we're testing for. Okay. And if you guys would give me a radio check on that, that would be great. I'm just going to check real quick here. Looks like the sound settings are pretty good. Turn on the avionics. And now, great, so that's running, and I've set this to COM 2. Turn on our radio lights. We're running without real sim gear right here. Carter, hello, sim captain, good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. Carter, that's very nice of you. That's very nice of you to say. I'm not much of a YouTuber anymore. I don't fly very often. Okay, so we're running at about 18 frames right now. Turning on the avionics cost me a little bit, but it's doing okay. And again, my experience with Vulkan is that it's kind of highest when you're on the ramp, that your frames are most taxed when you're on the ramp. So we're not on Pilot Edge or anything, but we'll at least play by the rules enough here to get a weather update, get our METAR 127.55. Let's see if this will work over here. I haven't used this in a long time because I've been running off the 2 GPS units. I say 127.55. I can hear my son playing Call of Duty in the other room, screaming with his buddies. Yeah, so I clearly don't have that active as COM 2. We'll just do it here then. Gonna fix that. I had it set for this to play the part of COM 2, so it may very well be that I've got it conflicts and it won't do them both at the same time. I'm not hearing Van Nuys here on this either. Let's see if we can pick up someplace nearby. Maybe the Van Nuys freak is wrong in the game. Burbank is 134.5. Let's try that.
Bob Hope Airport, Burbank.
Yeah,
Information
works.
Bravo. 1700 Zulu weather. Wind 140 at 7,
So
visibility more than 10. Sky conditions 2005. Bob Hope Airport,
Yep.
Burbank.
Okay. So
Information Bravo.
Working.
1700 Zulu weather. Wind 140 at 7, visibility more than 10. Sky conditions 2500 broken, 4500 overcast, temperature 16, dew point 9. Altimeter 2993. Arriving runway 15, departing runway 15.
Okay, Let me just look at this here. You get a black screen. I'm sorry to hear that, Ty. Yeah, I mean, talk about fortunate. I bought one of them and they sent me the other, which was very gracious of them. I'm excited to see that TPA scenery. I don't know if you've looked, Captain Mike, but I released a default objects. So in future releases of X-Plane default, the TPA will be one I designed, and it's pretty good. I have to say, I put a lot of work into it. Okay, so let's talk about here, 20 frames a second. Like normally I'd be, ugh, like I don't want to see 20 frames a second. But what I find is that it is really quite smooth. Now I can make it a lot higher if I wanted. I could, or I could at least increase the frames. I could dip the anti-aliasing. I could get another 5 or 10 frames out of it by backing off objects. But the fact of the matter is I find it's pretty playable. So like if worst case scenario is going to be 20 frames a second, this is not a very bad worst case scenario. It's really pretty fluid. There are very, very few stutters. It seems to work really quite well. Should I ask for a midfield departure from the fictional air traffic control? Hello to the United Kingdom. Well, Mike, if you go onto the gateway, we'll just depart. Well, we'll go all the way down. Mike, if you go onto the gateway, you can download the new TPA that I put up there and install it and try it out. Alright, I'm going to go out of auto mode for VMI Twic here and set my density up to about 80%. And you can see how objects are fading in and out when I do this. So I'll put it at about 63% clouds is where the game usually runs it. And I'll put my object's level of detail at about 80, and we'll see if we can hold something close to 20 frames. We're holding 18. Below 18, I know on Pilot Edge you fall behind the Pilot Edge controller scope, so they're not a fan of you being below 18, but we're not dipping below 18 right now. And I could barely live with this. Not the worst thing in the world, but I'd rather. So let's just test. I noticed that the more I go back and forth between, let's go down to anti-aliasing of 2x. That gave me 1 frame. So if I go to 4x or 8x, that cost me 1 frame. That took me down to 18. So, you know, there's a part of me that says, well, at that point, like, what's 1 frame? We'll see if it seems any smoother. So we're at 8x anti-aliasing. Now I'm not running HDR because that cost me quite a bit of performance. But that's why today's testing day. I designed this Van Nuys too that's in the game. Yeah, 17, it's hard for me to take. So, you know, one could argue that maybe I should back off the sliders just a little bit. I'll go down to 4x. But we're testing, so we're not backing off anything. Okay. Got a little stutter there for just 1 second. Flaps 50 in the Cirrus. Alright, adding more right rudder as we go. Frames are holding at 18. Rotate at 66. And again, very smooth. No stutters. You guys can take a look out the side. See what my VMI Twic settings there. Look out this side. And really you can see the number of objects. I mean, I'm just loaded with objects. Now if we look out this side, I'll use Twik to go to auto mode and tell it that I want to have 30 frames. And you can see how it drops the level of detail, and you can see how objects in the distance disappeared. But there's still a ton of objects, and it really didn't save me any frames. So the number of objects you have still matters, but I'm maxed out. Shadows, scenery, everything. And already here, as I turn away from Van Nuys, the frame rate starts to increase. Flaps coming up. So we'll fly out of the valley here and go. Looks like it's getting some stutters or some tearing on the stream, but I'm not seeing them in the sim. I'm watching the YouTube stream here live on mine. Agent Aviation, good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, no, this is Vulcan. That's what we're testing. So we are running Vulcan. And you can see out this window here that with overcast skies and a ton of objects, it's performing pretty well, 30 frames. Now if we just want to compare, let me take us from overcast down to broken. Now I got about 2 frames when we did that. And if I were to kill anti-aliasing completely and go to 1x, that only gives me 1 frame. So at least for my card, I'm clearly GPU limited here. I mean, you can see, if you look out this window, you can see here that my CPU is at 0.3 and my GPU is 0.001, which means my GPU is barely working. So I am clearly paying the price of my 4-year-old, almost 5-year-old i7 chip. So I guess Daddy's gonna have to buy a new motherboard and upgrade to a 9700. Because I just went to 8x there, and you can see that my GPU barely budged, and I picked up a couple frames. All right, let's go back out the front window. I hope everybody is staying safe. Now, if we wanted to continue, so now at Van Nuys we're at 18 frames. We're up to 22 now as we've moved away from the airport. If we wanted to go to scattered clouds, still about 22 frames. So the number of clouds doesn't seem to matter, at least for my card. If there's clouds, the shadows look good there, by the way, the cloud shadows, looking out that window. So if you got clouds, your frames are taking a hit, at least for me in the 1080 Ti. Let's make one more change. Oops. One more change. Let's go to Cirrus. And now I've got 30 frames, which looks great. It looks great. So, and the most important thing for me is that it's just been so smooth. I mean, again, if you look out this side window, the level of, I mean, we're running ortho scenery and we're in Southern California and there's a ton of objects being displayed and we've got HD mesh and, you know, it's running great. And this is a 4-year-old PC. All right, so I want to hop over to a place that's a little less populated. And maybe over to Oxnard. And let's go back to the real world weather. Now, one error that people have had has been when they go to open ActiveSky XP and load the custom weather file, they've said that the game freezes. It's actually just toggling over the window. So if you go over to just your Windows with an Alt tab, you can do that. And then you're good. And we'll see where my frames stabilize now. They stabilize at about 24. So I could have never have done this before 2 days ago. To be in Ortho in Southern California with overcast skies at 8x anti-aliasing with full objects and reflections and shadows. I mean, it would be a slideshow, and even at 20 frames, it would be so stuttery that it would be unflyable, and we don't have that problem now. And I would imagine it's only going to get better. See what things are like when we go into the clouds. In VR, it is frighteningly realistic. Put some of our instrument training to work here and see what happens to our frames as we go into the clouds. That looks pretty cool. Just hanging out of the bottom. It's like it's not quite putting us into the soup. Right at the bottom of this cloud layer, I'm trying to take us up. VR, the clouds were scarily realistic. I'm flying my instruments here. Looks cool though. Some people have said the clouds look better. I don't know if they do. You can still see them sort of moving out of the way like sprites. I don't think there's a way to get around that for now. But looks like we're coming up on top of that cloud deck. We'll be, I presume, in between two cloud decks, which could look cool. Give you a view out the side here. You can see the frames. Come. And we're coming up out of the clouds. Sorry I left it on that one screen view for so long. Forgot which way it was looking. This is X-plane. I don't know why my clouds look so dark. I mean, I'm not running anything that would change them, but they do look dark. So I don't know if I have some art asset that did it or what, but they look dark. These are default clouds. Okay, so now that we're out of the clouds, we're back to running about 18 frames a second. And again, if I were to back off objects or clouds, I can get myself some more frames, which we just did. So I hope everyone's staying safe wherever you are and taking this, give you a view out this window here. You can see it's even at, oops, I just bumped the camera, at 22 frames a second. It's very smooth, very few stutters, highly playable. And if we go back to Cirrus, then you can see it really looks great. One of the great things is they have fixed the water. So the water before looked weird, terrible. Doesn't look that way anymore, as you can see. Shadows are still weird. The cloud shadows, though, still have this weird shimmer to them. That's a bug they've known about forever. So I'll turn off Active Sky XP and we'll just land or do a buzz at the tower. Under these conditions. There, Active Sky XP just went away. So let's tell it again that we want Cirrus skies. Here we go. Hey Randall, thanks very much. Yeah, well, you know, we have time on our hands, at least I do. And make streaming more feasible. I'm not real keen to, we're up at 6,800 feet. I'm not real keen to Point Magoo Naval Air Station right down there. I'm not real keen to be in the airplane I ran if a bunch of people have been in it. But it's looking like it's getting less traffic, so I might go down there. And they've organized a system where you can rent the plane and not have to touch anybody or see anybody. So I might give that a go and see if I can go flying next week.
Bob Hope Airport Burbank information Bravo. 1800 Zulu weather.
No.
Wind calm.
Not Bob. This should be.
Oxnard information Bravo. 1800 Zulu weather. Wind calm, visibility more than 10. Sky conditions 20,000 scattered, 35,000 scattered, temperature 16,
oh, heck,
dew
let's
point
fly an approach.
-13. Altimeter 2992. Arriving runway 25,
Let's go to
departing
real-world
runway
weather
25. Advise on initial contact you have Bravo.
It'll take a second for those to download, but it'll do it. There we go.
Oxnard information
And,
Bravo. 1800 Zulu weather. Wind 120 at 6, visibility more than 10. Sky conditions 2500 broken, temperature 16, dew point 8. Altimeter 2994.
Okay.
Arriving runway 25,
Runway
departing
25.
runway 25.
So let's set up for
Advise
the,
on initial contact you have Bravo.
let's say that we're going to fly the RNAV 25. RNAV or ILS? Let's fly the ILS. Give me 1 second. Put this on the map. Where's our... They would give us radar vectors to Hoopla. Okay, so let's go ahead and procedure, select approach, ILS 25 from, let's see what poison they give us, FIM from the Fillmore VOR, or from goodbye. I'll go Fillmore VOR, that's fine. Enter. Let's go ahead and activate that. Okay, go over to GPS mode. Fillmore VOR is this way. We got to be a minimum of 4,200 feet for that, so let's go ahead and start getting that bugged. 4,200 feet. We're at 62, so we can start coming down. And I gotta put on some frame limitations here. There we go. Okay, so we're coming down to 4,200 feet. I'll bring the chat back on. Yeah, this is Vulcan. That's why today's testing day. We're testing for Vulcan. We've got 12 miles. We're still coming down to 4,200 feet. When we get down to 4,200 feet, we'll brief this approach. This scenery is Ortho scenery that I made myself. Okay, fuel pump is on, landing light is on, mixture is full rich. Get ready. A little offline here. Coming down to 42, 500 to go. Okay, 118.05, we've got the weather. Come up below the cloud deck. 100 feet. And here we have 42. Go back to our cruise power, 75%. Okay, this is the Oxnard ILS or localizer runway 25. Localizer frequency is 108.7. Okay, and final approach course is going to be 256, although we're going to get radar vectors here in a minute. Pick up the glide slope at Nelly 3,200, decision altitude 294 feet. Touchdown elevation 45 feet. Our MSA is 8,800 if we lose comms. We'll have local altimeter. Our missed approach. Let's look at the profile. We're going to come in from Hulpa at 3,700. Well, actually, we'll go down to Nelly, 3,200. We'll intercept the. Let's go to Hulpa. That's a radar fix. We'll intercept the localizer at Hulpa, most likely. 3,700, then down to Nelly at 3,200. Then we'll get the glide slope. We'll take it down. Missed approach course. We don't have a missed approach point because we've got a minimum descent altitude. Let's watch. I would normally have the autopilot on while doing this, by the way. But sometimes the autopilot's not working, so you got to be able to brief an approach while you're hand flying. So Nelly at 3,200 and then down 294 feet. Minimums 294 feet, 1 mile. We are well. We're fine on minimums. No problem there. If we go missed approach is going to be climb to 520 feet. Then climbing left turn to 2000 on the Camarillo VOR 249. So let's get that set. Camarillo VOR is 115.8. And that radial will be the Tune 49 radial, so we'll get that set. We'll intercept that radial if we go missed. We are coming up 1 minute to Fillmore VOR. And then climbing 520, climbing left turn 2000, Camarillo VOR 249 outbound is squid intercept. And then hold, and at squid, we're going to be making a teardrop entry into that for a standard, well, for a non-standard right-hand turn holding pattern. Okay, approach is briefed. Coming up to Fillmore, 4,200 feet. Then our next step is we're going to go down to Hulpa on a 183 radio out of Fillmore. Taking us to Kudak. We want to go to Hulpa. Okay, we can go to Hulpa now, and we can come down to 3,700 feet. I'm glad it looks realistic. This right here with the clouds looks really realistic, except for the shimmering shadows. Okay, 3,700 feet is our next. I'm not actually flying this very well by the book. Let's do this by the book here. Standard rate turns. Down to 3,700 feet, which is right here. Okay, we'd be talking to approach, so we can load in our tower frequency, which is going to be 118.05. And if we were on Pilot Edge, we could be doing this for real, but we're not. So, and again, our final approach course is going to be 256, so let's get that dialed in on that VOR. Keep our altitude. That's our localizer. 256, and the heading there is going to be 256. Actually, that's, I normally would head the heading bug to our missed approach heading, but our missed heading is to intercept that. So we'll just get it to set to 256 also, so they're consistent. And now that we're coming into our initial approach fix, we want to be getting close to our speed, which is going to be at about 50% power. So let's get trimmed for that. Turn past my approach. We'll come back on here. Sometimes, and I coded this, and sometimes it gets a little wonky. fact, it looks completely wonky. That's okay. Okay, so we're coming into 3,700 Hulpa at 3,700 feet, which is where we're supposed to be. Aviate, navigate. I fly with pilot edge all the time. I'm just not doing it today. So pilot edge is my preference for that stuff. Okay, we're coming up to Hulpa. And I think Pilot Edge is a great service. I'm a huge fan. They do great work. Okay, let's get for our initial fixed flows here. Our fuel pump is on, landing light is on, mixture is full rich. Flaps are not set quite yet. Take a look out our side windows. Okay, we switched over to VLOC, intercepting our localizer. Our next step down is the 3,200. Coming down to 3,200. Got a little crosswind, but not much. Nelly will be our next fix. And before Nelly, we want to be completely configured. So, we get down to 3,200. Blew through our localizer a little bit. It's been a while since I've flown practice approaches. It's probably been a couple weeks. Our plane will start to slow. We don't need to correct very much to capture that localizer again. We can go flaps 50. Okay, we are configured. We are bugged. We are below the glide slope. In fact, we're just catching it now. We are loaded with correct tower frequency. We are established on the localizer. We're ready to go. And switches over to tower.
Oxnard information Bravo.
We'd say
18.
Oxnard Tower, Cirrus 18, whenever I am 15 Julie Golf. 15 Julie Golf is, what is it, 134.95. Get our power set, get our approach stabilized. That's a mistake, I missed the tower frequency. This is why it's great having a sim. Alright, so we've got tower and we tell them that we are established on the ILS 25, and they would tell us that we are cleared to land. I find you need a little bit more power with the flaps in this model, Cirrus model, than in the real world. So basically, we've got a glide slope and localizer here, and we also have it here. And we're a little left and a little above. There we go, we just make little teeny changes, a few degrees at a time. Speed again is a little off. We'd probably be about, yeah, we'd be about 90 knots here. We're doing okay. We got 6 miles to go. Navigating from home, not quite. I didn't bump, I mean, while I'm running, so there's a question, the visual quality looks good, did I bump anything up? I mean, I am running with, we're testing out Vulcan today, so I bumped up everything. And if, when you watch the stream, if you go back to the beginning, you'll have a chance to see where I had things set. Alright, so we're just flying our needles here. Little small changes, we don't want to chase the needles. Nice 500 foot per minute descent rate, 94 knots is just about where we want to be. And it's a stabilized approach, meaning we're trimmed well enough that if we take our hands off the stick, the plane pretty much does what we want it to do. There's our outer marker. Okay. So there we go. And I'm not looking out the window. I'm looking straight ahead. Probably remind myself here of our missed approach plan. I mean, we can hit suspend on this, but what we're really going to do is we're going to go climb to 520 and then climbing left turn to 2000. Speed's still looking good. .4 miles, a little high, a little power out, bring us down. Good on the localizer. Hello from Madrid, Antonio, I hope you and your family are healthy. We're all watching Spain and hoping for the best in Spain. So take a little power out and you come right back to the glide slope pretty quickly. Still not looking out. Now remember, our decision altitude is 294 feet. So I won't look out the window until we're close to 300 feet. So for this flight model, about the 32% power gives me about 93 knots. As opposed to 25% power, which would be about 90 knots if I did it in the real airplane. Okay, we're not going to take out full flaps because we might have to go around. Go down to 25% power so we can slow the airplane down a little bit more. Trim it. Looking good. 400 feet, 200 to go, or 100 to go. As you get closer to the glide slope, little changes make a bigger difference, so you can't overcorrect. 300 feet, let's look up. We have the airport runway environment in sight. Go ahead and dump final flaps. Well, we'll just land like this. A little long, but that's what a no flaps or a half flaps landing will do for you. And this being X-plane, we have to be careful not to hit the brakes and screech the airplane off the runway. Okay, so Vulcan test in 1.51 works quite well. It's only the first beta. It's going to get a lot better as they go. So I'm optimistic. Candidly, and I gotta get these toe brakes fixed. It's way too sensitive. we'd switch over to ground and tell them we're here and that we want to go to the ramp. Okay, fuel pump off, landing light off, mixture leaned, flaps up, and where would we go? Control tower is, the jet center is this way. We'd switch over to tower or to ground. They'd tell us on 121.9. Okay. Wow, watching from Nairobi, Kenya, that is very cool. This app on my iPad is called ForeFlight, and it is, adjust the twig settings here. It is, a really great electronic flight bag. Now it's for use in the real world, so you have to pay for it. But I find that it's worth it, and I fly in the real world, so I use it. You don't necessarily have to have the highest level membership or subscription level, but it's, it's the real thing, and it talks to X-Plane, it talks to Prepared, it talks to, I'm sure it'll talk to the new flight simulator coming out from Microsoft. So it's cool, and it does a great job. It has all the charts in it. Makes it very, it shows traffic from Pilot Edge, for example. It won't show traffic from the sim itself. No, I believe it, I don't remember if it'll show not just sim traffic. But I definitely know it shows Pilot Edge traffic. Taxiing faster than I would in the real world here. Let's not build bad habits. There we go. I'd also be on the center line. So, ForeFlight. And there are a couple different alternatives to ForeFlight if ForeFlight isn't what you want. It's good to see you. You got here just at the end. We're testing Vulkan, and so far the test works great. Definitely more, I mean, I really have things bumped up almost to the max for me, and it's working great. This is where the jet center would theoretically be. This is where the FBO is. We all got a crew car. So they put us right over here. Between the twin and the 172. Okay, so throttle back, all the electronics off, mixture out. That's how we would do it. Okay, well, so conclusions. I can run at much higher settings. I'll switch over here again so you can see the settings that I was running at in Vulkan than I was before. I'm definitely, that's what I was running with. I'm definitely CPU limited. So I'm running off an i7, I think 6700. So a quad core, which I'm running hyper-threaded at 8. And as you look up here, you can see that, my 1080 Ti isn't even breaking a sweat. And the CPU is working, 3 times as hard. So, the next upgrade for the sim is going to be a new chip, which is going to mean a new motherboard. But I should be able to do that and keep the existing chassis and all the other stuff. So maybe that's the next COVID project, home with COVID project. So, okay, everybody, thanks for watching, and I'll post this as soon as I can, post-streaming. Sometimes I go back and edit a few things, but I expect to be online more often, and especially doing practice in Pilot Edge, because I got to make sure that I'm just looking back at some of the chat. I am home. I am looking forward to the new TorqueSim SR22, Colin. I missed that question. All right, everybody, be safe.